Hello and welcome to another episode of Speed Mentorship. My name is Matt Mackley, your host. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of Speed Mentorship. Here on Speed Mentorship, it is our privilege to help build your leadership one video at a time. I learned so much from these videos and I have so many different takeaways that I just want to continue to encourage you to share this with people that you believe would find value with these videos. Super excited for today's episode with Mark Wasylyshyn. Let's go ahead and dive in.
If we could just start by, you giving us a little bit about your background, then we can dive into some of the questions.
Yeah. I am actually a first-generation Ukrainian. My father immigrated to this country in 1948, and my mother's parents immigrated in the 1920s. So I grew up speaking Ukrainian before I spoke English. That was my primary language. Graduated from Rossford High School, and I have a bachelor's degree from Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. I first started off doing a little bit of real estate, which I still have a few rental properties, but that was my big focus for a long time, and got into law enforcement. I was with Perrysburg Police. I was a sergeant with Perrysburg, and I ran for sheriff in 2004. And I am currently the longest serving sheriff in the history of Wood County. I'm in my 5th term. And we're the only country in the world that elects the chief law enforcement officer. Very unique, important difference with our country. That was our founding fathers wanted law enforcement, obviously, land of law and order, but wanted to make sure that whoever was in charge of that law enforcement was accountable to the people. And that's why we elect the sheriffs. And Shire Reefs actually came from England, because you have a shire and they've collected the taxes for the king and enforced the laws for the kings. But difference being the sheriffs here answer to the people, not to a king.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, so it is kind of a...
And do you still speak any Ukrainian at all?
I do, actually, with everything going on in Ukraine right now. When I'm watching the news, it's amazing how quickly it comes back. I don't speak it like I did, as often as I did, but it's one of those things that comes back. So it's horrific what's happening in Ukraine right now, but I do understand what's happening. It's interesting that sometimes the reporter is accurate and not as accurate when they're interpreting what the person's saying. So
interesting, yeah. How do you say, like, I'm the boss? How do you say, like, I'm a boss?
Pan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. I don't know what any of that means, but that's beautiful.
Good, so you won't know if I was wrong. So
exactly.
That's good. That's even better.
Sweet. Okay, so what does a typical day look like for you? What are some of the tasks and stuff that you do on a daily basis?
One of the things I like about what I do is no 2 days are alike. I have a wide variety of varieties. Not only do I need to preserve the peace in the county, which we have deputies out there preserving the peace, detectives, etc. I'm responsible for the county 911 system, so I'm dealing with technologies all the time. I also run an all-inclusive resort called the Wood County Jail with about 120 guests that don't want to be there. So I'm dealing with all of their medical needs, psychological needs, hygiene, all those functions run basically, we're feeding them. We also do all the food for the Juvenile Detention Center and Department of Youth Services. So I run a restaurant and kitchen so the variety. And then on the civil side, I'm responsible for serving all of the protection orders, civil protection orders, other paperwork for the Common Pleas Court to make sure all that happens properly, entering warrants, taking out warrants, which is very, very important because you don't want to have someone that is in jail that should not be in jail, and you don't want to have someone that is not in jail that should be in jail. So a lot of responsibility on that end. So tremendous variety. 1 minute I'm dealing with a radio issue, next minute I'm dealing with the problem with a dishwasher in the jail, and the next minute I'm dealing with a catastrophe or some event that's happening in the county. So
that's fun.
Tremendous variety. I've got about 135 employees. And we're obviously at 24/7 operations, so there's never a dull moment. There's always something to do and a lot of challenges all the time.
That's good. What do you think are some of the top most successful habits, maybe at your work and from a personal side that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as well?
Engaging with as many people as I can. I think it's very, very important for me to be visible and accessible to the citizens of Wood County, who are my bosses. I have 132,000 bosses. That's the population of Wood County. I'm accountable to my employees to be visible and accessible to them. And I think that's important because it gives me a feel for what the concerns and issues are for my deputies, and also what are the concerns and issues of the citizens in Wood County.
Okay, solid. So what stresses you out? What are some of your stressors, and how do you manage stress on a daily basis?
Biggest stressor is when an employee does something that's out of context of what we stand for and what we're public servants. And once in a while, you'll have an employee that's like, what were they thinking? Where are they coming from? Or where did this come from? And we all make mistakes. I every time I interview a prospective employee or anytime I reassign someone or promote someone, I talk to them about honesty and integrity. And I tell them that I believe that there was one perfect man that lived here 2,000 years ago. The rest of us make mistakes. Yeah. It's how we deal with those mistakes. Yeah. And I tell them, I expect them to make mistakes. Now, if you make the same mistake over and over and over again, we've got problems. But I expect them to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and I would say confess to the mistake or admit to the mistake.
Yeah.
And I make it very, very clear, if you lie or you lie about a mistake, you're fired. I have zero tolerance for the dishonesty, but if I have someone that's honest and they understand that, I look for servant mentality. Yeah. If we have that, we're in good shape, and we can work through most things. And people are forgiving also. They understand that deputies are human beings, and they're going to make mistakes. Yeah. Problem is, some of our mistakes can be, if a 911 dispatcher transposes a number, we have a serious problem. So accuracy is really, really important in a lot that we do. Yeah. And it's hard to be, when you're dealing with human beings, for them to be accurate 100% of the time. It just doesn't happen.
So when you see somebody making a mistake and they're not living up to the expectation that they need to be doing, and they go in and it does something that bothers you or frustrates you, do you have like a ritual or a mechanism or anything that you do to try and calm yourself before you have conversations like that?
I tell myself that I need to look at things from their perspective. And that's one thing I think that's very important for anyone, all of us in life to do, especially for leaders, is putting ourselves in their shoes. When I'm dealing with a dispatcher, for example, and I'm just going to use that makes a mistake, we get 40 to 50,000 911 calls a year. So they have a lot going on. We dispatch 52 different entities. So there's a lot of room for mistakes. So I always have to remember that 99.9% of the time, maybe this employee is doing everything right, so you have to take that into consideration. It's just when someone goes off track is where it really gets stressed and gets frustrating. When someone's going down a path that we don't want them going down.
Let's talk about ego. How do you manage your ego on a daily basis? How do you keep it in check? How do you make sure it doesn't, become this huge monster and get out of control?
Well, I remember that I'm a servant and I work for the people, and I have a pass-fail test every 4 years. Every 4 years I have an election, I have a pass-fail test.
That's true.
So if I don't do my job well, my stockholders, from a company standpoint, they're going to have an election every 4 years. Do we keep the CEO in his position? So I have a pass-fail test every 4 years. But the key is also surrounding yourself with people who are going to be honest with you. For example, your father and I and Rob Bettinger and Rick Ruffner, we get together for breakfast on a very regular basis, multiple times a week, or lunch multiple times a week. And we really were very frank, and if someone listening to our conversation, oh my God, you guys actually like each other? Because we would lay into each other about all kinds of things. And very humbling experience when that happens. When if I were doing a newscast or something, your dad would be the first one to say, "Well, you said too many times, and you said and you did this wrong, you did that wrong, your zipper was down."
All the time.
he would be doing that all the time, and we would give it back to him. So that kind of kept us in check. And also, as I go around and I regularly, whether it's going out to breakfast, lunch, or different meetings that I have, people, when they see you face to face, are a lot of times going to be very frank about what their issues are. They may not call me on the phone, they may not email me, they may not step in, but when they see me on their turf, if I'm in their community, we're doing something, they're going to come to me and say, "I'm unhappy up with this, so why'd you do that?" So the other thing you have to remember, though, is to not get upset about the people that either don't understand why you made a decision you made, or I think Facebook. I don't like Facebook because people say things on Facebook they would never ever say to somebody's face. Yeah. But they put it out there, so you have to filter out a lot of that.
It can cause a lot of damage. It can cause a lot of damage, and probably more to them because what they said is just on the internet forever now.
Yes.
So
yes, that's true. Yeah. That's true. So the key is to always know that you're a servant, and having friends who are not going to be afraid to tell you what they really think.
What about mantras or language? I mean, are there things, and I know this is something that evolves over time, we tend to pick up different mantras, but are there key mantras or key things that you tell yourself routinely as you're getting ready to do something, or maybe you're down and you remind yourself of something? Are there any of those sort of things?
Yes, actually, I've had different friends of mine that have had different sayings that they would say all the time, and it's amazing how often I repeat those sayings. Like, there's one is because I do work virtually 7 days a week, depending on what's going on. The harder you work, the luckier you get. The luckier you get, the harder you work. And because that friend of mine says it's not luck, it's just you're working hard, you're in a lot of opportunities, but people think, oh, he's just being lucky. Well, no, he's working his butt off, and you get a lot more opportunities when you're out there doing things. So a lot of us people, oh, it's luck. Well, it's not. It's working hard. The other one was coming events cast long shadows. And that's saying, like, for the economy and other things, that there are things that are on the horizon that if you allow yourself to see them, you can see them happening. Certainly, with interest rates going up and things happening with our economy, that's not something that just happened a month ago or 2 months ago. Exactly. We've seen it coming. And so that's another popular one. So these were sayings that a friend of mine by the name of Ken Lay, who is a very successful businessman, one of the most successful business people I've ever met, and he had these different mantras, and it's amazing. The other one that he said, and I did not understand at the time, and another friend of mine, Brian McMahon, says a lot, and that is, no good deed goes unpunished. And at first I'm like, what? How it's good to do good deeds. How can they not go unpunished? Well, what I think it means, I've taken out of this, is you have an employee that you want to do something that has a unique situation. It's like, you know what, I'd like to do this for them, and that would be a good deed, but it goes punished because then the other employees go, well, you did it for her, why aren't you doing it for me? And so that's where you have to remind my people a lot of times where we want to do something, it's like, no good deed goes unpunished. What are the consequences going to be of doing this good deed? What are the ramifications going to be? And if you understand those ramifications, it's always good to do good things. I'm not trying to discourage that. But you also have to really think about, what are the consequences if I make an exception for this person? How does that affect the other employees?
Totally. That's good. So, I mean, obviously in business and career and life in general, we're going to face challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced? And, how did you overcome those challenges? How did you get through some of those situations that you were in?
I think the importance is prioritizing things. And every day I have to prioritize, or things happen. Because, again, I can have a set schedule, and then something significant happens. It's like, okay, do I need to personally go to this event? Can I send my chief deputy? Can I send a captain? Or do we all need to go to the event? So depending on what it is may determine whether I personally respond to something. For example, when my special response team gets called out, we try to have one of the top command at all those call-outs, not telling the tactical stuff for them to do, because they know that better than I do. It's making some of those final decisions of, yes, let's breach the door, or what tools do you need, what else do you need at the scene to help them do what they need to do. So prioritizing, and very important is to prioritize family. And I'm a father of twins. They're seniors in college. But when they were growing up, they were going through school, I made it a priority to go to their school functions, to go to my daughter's horse shows, to go to my son's Boy Scout meetings, and go on the campouts. And I thought that people might be upset if I said, you know what, I'm not going to come to your pancake breakfast because I'm going to a camp out with my son. Amazing how virtually all those people would say, oh, you're doing the right thing. Go to your son's camp out. So it didn't negatively affect me, because you're always going, okay, people are going to get upset. When you're an elected official, you're sensitive to those things. And people have been very, very accepting and appreciative when I would choose to go to something that involved my children versus going to some official event or some other function. And that really reinforced and really helped make me a better person, because then I could concentrate on their lives and be a dad, which really is the most important job. You're bringing up that next generation. To me, there's nothing more important than being a parent.
Nobody else could do that job, right?
Exactly.
You and I are the only ones that can do that.
That is absolutely right, and there's nothing more important, because you're molding that future that's going out there. So I always concentrate and focused on family first, and again, it may make longer days, but it's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it in the long haul, because looking back, I have no regrets of gee, I wish I would have spent more time at more of the campouts. My son actually liked it when I did the Boy Scout campouts, which not all boys do, like their dad hanging out all the time. My son liked it, so he would always want me and invite me to come to all the campouts, which took me out of my comfort zone too. I mean, that was not my idea. I'm not a camper.
Yeah.
So it definitely took me out of my comfort zone.
So you got your top performers, and then you got your not so top performers. Sure. How do you manage and handle the top performer or the bottom performers? And when is it time to kind of say, hey, this person's not working out?
Absolutely. The key, first of all, is if they're ever dishonest, they're done. They're done. And they all know that. And that's saying, again, because you have to have that trust, you have to have that honesty and integrity. And that's saying that has to, especially in law enforcement, we have to have that honesty and accountability, transparency.
Love it.
Actually, we've had body cameras, for example, for about 8 years now, since like 2014. We were the first in the region to have body cameras. We had dash cameras since the second year I was sheriff.
So good.
Again, transparency.
Yeah.
Someone screws up, I want to know about it, but 99% of the time, it was showing that the deputy's doing the right thing. So the challenge is when there's someone that's not performing well, you have to figure out why aren't they performing well. Is there something going, especially if they were doing really well, and all of a sudden things aren't going as well, is something going on in their personal life? Are they having marital problems? Are they having an unhealthy child? Are they, what's going on that is causing that? And hopefully it's a short-term thing that can bring them around. Mm-hmm. The other challenge is sometimes people get over-promoted. They maybe are a really good deputy. Maybe they're an excellent sergeant.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they move up to lieutenant, and maybe they got a little bit more administrative than they thought it was going to be, or for whatever reason not happy in that position, or now have a lot more responsibilities, and they're kind of floating there. So what sometimes can happen is to save face. I've actually had people ask when there's an opening at the lower level to go back to that level, saying, you know what, I appreciate that you made me a lieutenant, but I was much happier being a sergeant. And next time there's an opening, can I go back to being sergeant? Absolutely. So we will do that. The other thing is to try to bring them around. We have so much invested in our employees that, and it's so expensive to replace people and get people in the culture and all the processes that go with that. So you want to work with them and find out what's going on. And sometimes when someone is struggling, another coworker, part of the, let's say command staff, having them coach someone and work with them, that they're going to feel comfortable doing that, where if I step in as a sheriff doing that, it might be a little intimidating. Yeah. So when they have someone of equal rank going in and saying, hey, what are you struggling with, or why are you having trouble with this, and working with them, communicating, and the hard part is letting people know that they're struggling, because sometimes they don't want to admit it, or they're thinking they're covering it up, or they may not realize that they're struggling, and that's shame on us if we have someone that's struggling and we don't tell them that they're struggling, and not only tell them they're struggling, but how they can improve and then
fire them afterwards. Like, hey, what? I thought I was doing great, So I completely agree. Like, best thing we could do is challenge them, have those conversations, engage in dialogue, engage in that, and I like what you said. Try and is there something else going on like in their personal life too? Because I've seen that so many times as like a root cause for somebody's attitude. And it's like, hey, I can have a little bit more grace if you're open to talk about some of those things. But that also goes back to culture and what kind of culture you're setting.
What kind of culture you have. Because some cultures don't allow people to speak up and talk about what's bothering them or what's going on in their lives. And that's a shame, because then everybody loses up.
And that's a good tie into, I think, our next question is, when it comes to creating a good culture, like, good cultures, I've heard this a lot as well, as good cultures don't happen on accident. They're extremely intentional, and they're extremely intentional and curated by the topmost leaders to make sure that they're fine-tuning things and only allowing things that make sense to be in that culture. So what kind of tips do you have to kind of curate a positive culture in an organization?
Lead by example. And as I mentioned, I never swear. Certainly at the office, I don't raise my voice. I'm always professional. I expect my people to always be professional. Yeah. I communicate all the time, whether it's our weekly staff meeting, which starts out with lieutenants on up, and then we'll have a follow-up after that meeting. We just have our fiduciaries. I also, with Eric retiring in July, we've already picked his successor. So I make sure that the successor is involved in decisions we're making now, and making sure that he is involving his successor, which we just appointed. So that way they learn the culture, they learn how we think. And even though Rod Conrad, who's going to be the chief deputy in July, He's a very different person from Eric.
Yeah.
But I'm having them spend as much time together as possible so that he can see how Eric comes to his decisions and how Eric deals with me.
Yeah.
How does Eric deal with other subordinates? How does Eric deal with other things going on, so that Rod can learn from that. And we have several months to have that happen. Plus, they've always been close anyway. They've worked together for years. But it's making sure that when I am thinking about something or want to discuss something, a lot of times it was just Eric and I in the room. Well, now I make sure that Rod's in the room also, so we can discuss things and come to, hey, here's a problem that we have. Here's what are your thoughts on the best way to deal with this? And I want Rod to learn how Eric and I discuss it and how we come to an answer. And certainly very interested in his opinion on this, because he's going to be part of the team.
You said, how often are you communicating to the whole team?
Once a week, every Wednesday. We have a weekly staff meeting. Again, once in a while I'm out of town or something, but even if I'm gone, then the chief deputy or someone else runs that meeting.
That's really
but
good.
It's a weekly of, I'll have different things that I want to make sure are being brought out, but we also go around the room and everyone talks about their world, if you will, and what's going on in that world, what challenges they have. For example, the lieutenant of the detective bureau may talk about some of the cases they're working on and what the status is on those cases or crime trends.
Yeah.
The road lieutenant will be talking about, hey, had a deputy hit a deer last week and the car's totaled, deputy's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe talking about new employees and how they're working out. The jail is going to be talking about jail issues, which for a long time obviously centered around COVID and how we minimize COVID exposure in the jail. So we would have that weekly meeting, which really benefited me a great deal because I'm hearing every week what is going on throughout all the different divisions of the office. And then everyone else, part of being one team, one office, they're understanding, oh, wow, I've got this problem. This week that person's really having some serious stuff going on in their division. And like, you know what, and the other thing that's happened, which is really nice, someone will bring up an issue they're having and someone else will say, you know what, we can help you with that. I've got someone that can do that for you. And it really helps with that team and one office approach, because so often, and certainly when I first took over, there were the different divisions or bureaus within the office, and they didn't work together. It was almost like competitive of, I have my knowledge and power. Sure. I'm really important because I know what I know, and you don't know what I know.
So unhealthy.
So, yes.
So unhealthy,
But that was the culture when I took over, and it really took years and years to get beyond that culture. Yeah. And now it's so beautiful to see the detectives and the road working together, and the civil division working with the road and the jail, and helping transport prisoners or whatever needs to be done. Or the deputies at the courthouse going the extra yard to do some things to make less burden for the jail. So it just, it's beautiful to see that, but you have to nurture that, you have to encourage it, and I have to be the cheerleader when I see that coming and say, hey, great move, I'm glad you brought that up, hey, that's great that you're able to help the jail, or it's great that you're able to help the road.
Well, obviously what you're doing is working, so,
so far.
Keep on.
We never take it for granted, though.
Yeah.
Never, ever. That's the other thing that's really important. Never, ever take it for granted. It's a work in progress.
Okay, and then to wrap it up, final question is, if you were to restart your career today, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
That's and I saw that question before I came in. I thought, wow, how am I going to answer this? Because that is not an easy question to answer. But I think to try to enjoy the moment. There's a book. It's called The Power of Now. I forgot to mention that. It's actually a book I should read again. And it's really the importance of enjoying whatever stage and whatever you're doing right now. And I go back to when my wife and I had our twins, and I would hear people say, "Oh, well, it'll be great when they get out of their diapers. It'll be great when they can watch." It's that you gotta love the stage they're in, and we really, I don't want to say forced ourselves, but we cherished the moment from being little infants that are 100% reliable, can't do anything. Go, wow, it can't get any better than this, and it's like and then they get to the next stage, and it's like, wow, they're interacting. This is even better than it was before. Yeah. Can't be any better than this. And then as they grow and they go to kindergarten or whatever, it's like, wow, it can't get any better than this. They're sponges. They're absorbing everything. They're interacting with little people, and it does. It just keeps getting better. Now they're graduating from college, so I hope it keeps getting better. I miss them. Yeah. But it's the power of now, and I guess so. If I were to give myself advice, is to always remember to enjoy and appreciate what you're doing in life right now, because life ends up being memories, and you have to enjoy the now. So often our brain is thinking about the future or thinking about the past, but we need to focus more on the present and enjoy the present and make the best of the present.
It's really good. Alrighty, Mark, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Very fun.
Good. Thank you.
If you guys found value in today's episode, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for being a part of our leadership community, and look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.